Hi, good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for joining us. My name is Mark Merritt, and I'm with Double Helix. I'm the host of Double Helix. It's a podcast that focuses on how connections around us, whether they're social or mental, emotional, or spiritual connections, actually have a direct impact on our physical health and our overall well-being. I'm excited today. We've got a good friend of mine that we have on today. Her name, I call her Dolas, which is what we've all known her as. Those of us that know her, it's Dolas, and but her official name is Dr. Dolapo Fakuade. Did I say that right?
Yeah, you did.
I always I always question, right? When I get to your last name, I'm like, how am I gonna do?
Now, you know I'm easy. How many times did you practice, by the way?
Practice your name?
Yeah.
None?
No, no, okay, that's fine. I'm just pulling your legs. You know the way I am.
I'm kidding. Yeah, I know. I'm like, so so with Dulles, let me give a quick intro. Dulles is kind of give a little bit of your background, a little bit about what your experience is. I've got something written here, and we'll just kind of go through. So Dulles is an accomplished academic and a consultant specializing in intelligence, security, and disaster management. As the program leader in intelligence, security, and disaster management at the University of Derby, she brings over a decade of international experience expanding roles in the UAE, Australia, and New Zealand. And we could go on and on. Your education and all your accolades. To give you an idea, everyone, when Dolas and I were originally talking about coming on together, I got a message from her. Oh, I have to go here. Can we do it later? Some country called her, which isn't unusual, and says they need help. So, Dolas, I'm curious how, tell us a little bit more in detail about what you do, because you're all over the place. Seems like you go everywhere.
Well, you make it sound that like it's a disturbing line of career to be in, but it's also exciting, but and reflective at the same time because I'm into security and disaster management, and as you
Mm-hmm.
can imagine, we have quite a lot of that in the world now. Not that I possess answers to everything, but um, I try to understand context in relation to content that I know. So, for example, people differ, but what we want in life are similar. And so that opportunity to actually engage with people in during their despair or opportunity to engage with people when you know that risk and threats are imminent is very important because how do you get people to accept that, oh, they have to prepare for something bad? And it's that form of engagement that motivates me to go around. So, for example, I always tell people that we know traveling is risky, but we still do it. We take travel insurance and we pack our things and go anyways. There's that level of
Right.
acceptance in it. And so for me, it's that opportunity to understand people of different background and different, at different location. What is their perception about risk? What level of risk are they willing to accept, and how do they want to navigate those challenges? Because for me also it's an opportunity to learn. um, Such interactions also inform my teaching back in class or engagement with the public sector. It also informs my research, so it's kind of like a loop, you know. Engagement with people inform research, research inform teaching, teaching inform research, and vice versa. And so, and this is why I relish the opportunity to go anywhere, whether I've been there before or whether it's a new adventure. I just always, excitedly go into some of those places to understand new context or nuances. And if there are things that I erroneously thought of, it's always an opportunity to correct that. So I think that excitement is also shared by my hosts when I get to a place, and they want to engage because then they see someone who is not judgmental or trying to lord their expertise on them, but willing to interact to help understand. And they might also actually come up with solutions or the way they want to handle the situation. But it's always a refreshing experience going to anywhere or a new place. So, yeah, and this is why I'm happy to always hop on the plane and go.
Yeah, I think in our interactions, so that everybody understands, Dolas and I, we met 9 years ago.
Wow,
It's
you are
been nine
old.
years.
You are old. I am
Yeah,
not.
right. No. It's only me. I'm the one that got a little gray in the beard since then. So,
Yeah, there you go.
um,
I'm younger since 9 years
that's a
ago. I never
problem.
knew it's that long. But yeah,
Yeah, it was January of 2016
yeah.
when a group of us came over from Utah Valley University, and we went to Christchurch, New Zealand, in the middle of winter for up here in the northern hemisphere, down to the summer in New Zealand. And we spent 3 weeks down there studying the recovery, the whole process from the how Christchurch, what they did before their huge earthquake that was 5 years earlier. So it was 2010, 2011. And what their prep was like, what the response was like, and what the recovery has been doing. So it was our focus for that 3 weeks, which was really fascinating. That's when we first met, was there.
Yeah.
And what I saw when you mentioned that you like the interaction, you like to be able to hear, you're a very knowledgeable individual, but I think you're exactly right, where you want to see, where are they at, what do they need to know, how, bridging that communication gap to make sure that connection is right.
Yeah, and very much so. It highlights the importance of connection and what you've encouraged us to talk about today. Because I think in my field, actually, is extremely essential. Whether it's the act of connecting to something or someone, or whether it's the state of being connected to other factors in the environment. We don't
Yeah.
exist in isolation. We are living in a house. The house is located in a city, uh, or suburb. The city is located in a state or the region, in a country, and within all those sphere, you've got different system processes and other people that, whether we like it or not, we have to interact or connect with them in some ways. And so, what's the importance? What's the relevance? What's the benefit of those connections or those layers of system and processes and even people to us? And so, it's important to understand how that's those connections or those systems or processes, what role they play in our life and as in theirs, because strong connection is very important to promote trust. You're not very likely to want to engage with someone or something or system you don't trust. If someone sends you a link online, you don't trust it and you feel it's dodgy, you don't click on it. And so,
Right.
yeah, because you know that once you take that first step, is you're linked, or you're kind of then obligated to continue to interact. We also know that connection improve communication. So, for example, professional connection in emergency management and disaster management and security is very important because it promotes information sharing. We don't always have all you need at every given time. So you need to lean on other people. And but mind you, you need to be very careful how you have nurtured or managed relationship between before that time, because people won't share information with you if they don't trust you, if they don't know you. So it's about the
Right.
connection. The connection is also important for interoperability. This is how the ability of agency or groups or institutions, the ability to communicate and coordinate effort during destructive events or disaster. This is very important in this field. And the social connections we have as individuals, whether it be emotional connection to people, to our family, to our friends, to our loved ones, is very connected to our wellness and well-being. And this is very important. We talk about personal resilience, because your state of mind, your physical state, your well-being, they're all very important, whether you're susceptible to harm or to hurt. And when some major factors or things in our environment, because again, we're connected to our environment, and so we're
Right.
not divorced from it. So I'm going to go a little talking about disaster now, because we've talked about Christchurch. So you can live in a country, you can live in a city, and they will be, exposed or prone to natural hazard phenomenon. You can't control those things. You can't say, okay, tomorrow I'm going to make sure the earthquake doesn't occur for the next donkey years. We don't control those things. We can't control or prevent tsunami, hurricanes, and some of this natural hazard phenomenon from occurring. And we are connected to the environment in which they live. So understanding the interplay and how they interact and what the impact they might have and the vulnerabilities we have, they're also important in building all these social connections, economic connections, environmental connection. There's always a saying in New Zealand, that the Maori are the indigenous people here, that if you treat your environment well, it will treat you well. So there's a great caution into how you treat water, manage water, treat the environment, take care of the environment so that it can be kind to you and feed you. And this is very important. So you just don't talk about, the intra connection that you have. It's also the interconnection that you have both with people and the environment in which you are positioned. So these are some of the things we try to promote to people. That whilst you work on yourself as an individual, it's also important to pay attention to who are you connected to and why you're connected to them. Okay, what are you connected to and how are you connected to them? What role do you play in their life and vice versa? In your place of work, what are you connected to and how are you connected to them? To things in your place of work. At times we talk about toxic work environments, and people have so much embraced toxicity that they almost don't recognize it anymore. And so when I ask people how their place of work is, and they say, oh, it's fine, it's definitely not toxic. And I said, you mean it's toxic? Because why are you saying what it is not rather than saying what it is? And it's always a tricky one. We spend quite a lot of time at work. And so professional relationship and connections are very, very important because whether you admit it or not, you spend quite a bit of time there. If you're working or if you're in a school or whatever, you spend quite a deal of time there. So what are you connected to there and how does that, your connection impact on your well-being and your wellness? Okay, so this is very important, and I'm sure that came through. For example, when you visited New Zealand, there's always that sense of connection to the environment, to the culture. I think at some point when
Yeah.
we talk about some community engagement and activity, we'll talk about spirituality and that sense of place. You just feel it. You step out of the airport and it just feels different. And that's the
Yeah,
connection.
right.
Every time I travel and I come back home and, I step out of the airport, I step into Christchurch, it's different. I drink the water, it's different. There's that sense of place and sense of belonging. There's elements of spirituality there. But I think every one of us would agree that there are certain places we feel connected to. I'm sure you probably feel the same when you arrive in Utah. We call it sense
Yes.
of place. And this is why we look at disaster and to the extent to which we have to be sympathetic in our recovery effort. Do we recover in a way that we we lose the soul of a place? And I'll explain that. I think we're a very modern society, and we think, oh yes, when we recover, we have to make it amazingly better. This is good because it speaks to resilience. But what about the soul of a place?
And that was one thing that I noticed in Christchurch, right? There was a couple things that when you've been talking that have come to mind. One, when we talk about just that connection, interconnectivity with our neighbors and with that community, we at one point went and there were two different areas that we went to when we were going around, and I could look on a map and I could say that's the spot. This community that we went to where they had a community center right in the middle of their neighborhood. And they looked at it and said, hey, you know what? No one's coming to help us, right? Because everywhere was destroyed. And so what do we need? And so that became ground zero for them. That was their command center. And they just took care of each other. So-and-so's got this or that. And it was amazing. That community was so tight and such a good community, as opposed to you go a mile away to another neighborhood where everyone pretty much was on their own and they still felt disconnected, as opposed to our that first neighborhood that we went to. And then when you go to Christchurch itself downtown, they tore down 1,600 buildings or something like that were destroyed in the earthquake. And what I loved when you talk about keeping the soul of the community was this dead spots. Instead of leaving these holes in the ground, they allowed people to come in, and I'll show some pictures. I took a whole bunch of pictures of graffiti, and then beautiful graffiti art. They're doing whole sides of buildings, and they have I remember one block, they had turned it into an outdoor dance studio. It had the mirrored ball, the disco ball, and they had a washing machine there that you could plug your phone into and it would play music. And so people would be out there dancing in the middle of the day, but they didn't lose the soul of Christchurch. That was still a big part of what was going on, which I thought was really neat.
Yeah. A lot has changed since you visited, so you do have to come back. But yes, it just speaks to the role of connection in holistic health and well-being.
Mhm.
It's not a spare or a space of denial. Okay, so this is not what we're talking about, but it's just the connection you have, the link you have with other people that keep you going in such a horrible situation. Uh, how prepared do we consider ourselves in relation to what is happening around us? Because a lot is happening around us in the world. We do also say that yes, I live here in my niche here, or I live in the countryside. It's beautiful, or I live on an island.
Yeah.
I'm self sustaining. I've got everything green. I don't care what is happening around the world. It doesn't bother me. But I think COVID was a rude reminder of how connected the world has become, because all of a sudden the thing that you didn't create in your own country pretty much got to your country and changed everything. It's still changing. Um, still
Right.
influencing economically the things we do around now, and that's remarkable. How risk can transfer or can be international, but it speaks to how connected the world has become. We talk about globalization, and in the true sense of it, we don't kind of appreciate that it's also about the connectedness and the state of being mutually dependent on one another, whether it's directly or indirectly. And this is why in my field, we look at economic relationship, also connection. We look at environmental connection. We look at political connection and international connection. Because not just in a place like New Zealand or Christchurch, that is an amazing place. When disaster occur, people often need help because of the scale in which it has occurred, but also the frequency of it. Look at Canada when they had wildfire. They requested assistance from around the world, even all the way from Australia. It is a developed economy. They have capacity. They have, ultra modern facility and firefighting equipment, but the scale of this often overwhelm. Look at the States also. And this is where we talk about collaboration. Who are we connected to in that sense internationally? I know we do that in a diplomatic sense and say, okay, well, who are allies? Who do we have offer of assistance from? With agreements with, and these are some of the things you do in preparedness. And then we should scale that down to micro level. I always ask individuals, how prepared are you for the things you know can cause disruption to your life? So, in quote, the everyday disaster. If you run out of power, if you run out of fuel, if you run
Right.
out of basic and essential, I mean, that was one thing that we learned to embrace during COVID. Essentials. If you run out of essentials, um, what are you connected to, and how might you navigate that that challenge? So scale it up gradually and start talking about bigger things. And this is how you get people to understand that there are certain things that you can't control. And so when disruptive events happen, be it fire, be it flooding, earthquakes, tsunamis, what have you, you then get to appreciate that, yeah, there are other factors that interact around you that you're not connected to that then affect you. So I'll give you an example. I've had to support sessions that people tell me, organizations tell me, local authority, municipality, complaints, businesses, they tell me what they've put in place in terms of how they're prepared to respond to a shutdown, a terrorist attack, or what have you, pretty much any form of disruption. And they're usually of the opinion that they would be able to come back into their building regardless of what has happened to either activate their plan or carry on working or activate something or deactivate something. And I said, well,
Yeah.
if you have something of certain skill and your area is cordoned off, sealed off, then you won't have access. And you start giving them examples. You're not going to be able to access certain places because it's dangerous, not because the government is being difficult, but because it is dangerous and they don't want more people to die. So you can't just access a place to reach out to your loved ones or go back to pick things. They try as much as possible to prevent further fatalities. And then they said, what do we do? And I said, have you even talked to your local emergency services to know what the arrangements will be and what the continuity arrangements will be and what you need to do, how your plan may affect theirs and theirs yours. And this is how I kind of try to discreetly promote connectedness, because your plan, your ideas is not going to be robustly effective. You might think it's robust, but it might not be effective or appropriate if it's not, you don't understand how it connects to, you know, who or what around you. It's like saying you want to build a house by the beach. Who would authorize that? And what would happen in the next 5 years that would impact on that? What if that side of the beach has actually been sold off to a developer and you just walk in there and say you want to build? I know nobody will be that silly to do something like that. But this is again, this
No,
is
but this
what we
is a
mean
good
that
spot. It's okay.
it's okay. I'm just going to pitch my tent here. And alas,
Yeah,
there's
it's
actually
good.
been a policy to sell it to a developer to do something fancy with it. Again, that emphasizes the importance of connectedness, being connected to
Right.
what happens around us, not in the sense that it controls you, okay? Because people are very sensitive about their privacy, about what they do, how much control they have about how much information they put out there. But this is where you carefully think about what social connections do you have and what role they play in your life. And on the social, you can break that down further to look at health links, well-being, and all that, and family and friends. And you can look at what economic connections you have, because again, these are challenging times. How might that help you to navigate a critical situation or a disruptive event? People will talk about their insurance, they will talk about their will, how economically buoyant is that to take you through some challenging or trying times. If you're a minimalist, well, maybe, but yeah, what other things are you connected to? Children or family that may make a demand on what your economic links and connections. And of course, I've mentioned environmental connection. We know that people choose to live in green places. We've seen offices
Right.
bring green into their, the work environment just because of what it does psychologically. You see airports around the world, Singapore airport, Thai airport, Qatar, Indore. And you see some of these airports around the world and some of the things they're doing within the airport, putting trees in there, putting forest in there, choosing the colors carefully, like water in New York, you see the waste being transformed also. Some of these features are chosen carefully. You see children's area, play area. They are carefully thought through that even when people are traveling, they still remain connected to the environment. You see iconic places, iconic features. statues and things put in places just to remind people of their roots and what they're connected to. These are all significant. These are all measures to make sure that we stay connected to environment and the impact of that on our wellness and well-being. And so we also stay true and try to be, considerate of those things when we prepare for disasters. Now, in my field, you look at, okay, what would help people with their recovery psychologically? It's not just putting the people and say, okay, yes, you're going to recover now. We'll put you in a hotel. If
Oh,
you
you
lose your
guys are
house, we'll
good.
put you
Just
there.
hang out together. It's fine. You'll be
Yeah,
okay. Right. No,
yeah.
everything's good.
We all know it's more than that. It's the psychological
Right.
impact. And I think this is where I probably touch a little on the emotional and spiritual connection, because I think at times you probably wouldn't know how you will handle trauma until you've been there. And you don't know exactly what will actually break you until you've been there. But it's also the reality that you cannot unsee what you have seen.
Right.
And this is the problem. So I know people now in Bangkok. So Bangkok, Thailand is not.
Mhm.
They've not experienced earthquake before. Earthquake has happened in another country and it's affected them. The aftershock, the shake. So they don't know how to deal with it. But they've seen that building come down. They've seen some of those hotels, high-rise hotels, and what that's done to the infinity pool. They've seen the level of um, destruction and damage in Myanmar, their neighboring country. They can't unsee that. So the trauma now is every time there's aftershock, they're scared to go into a building. And there's a lot of high-rise buildings in Bangkok. If you've been there, they have lovely buildings, a lot of it in Bangkok. So it's a traumatizing experience. People are not sleeping well. What about the
I kind of experienced that. I experienced the look of that when I was there in New Zealand. I stayed a few days longer than everybody else. And I went to, I think it was my last day in country. I went to lunch with Ian
okay,
Duncan
yeah, I remember
is a
that.
mutual person that we know. Ian's awesome. And Ian Duncan and I went over to go to lunch at this little cafe a couple blocks away from the fire station he worked at. And we were sitting at lunch. Now, this is 5 years after the huge earthquakes and the aftershocks that New Zealand had, or that Christchurch had, was thousands of aftershocks within those 5 years. Right. And so we were sitting there, and I can be honest that more than one of us that was in this big group of people that came over, you want to feel something, right? We're coming here to study an earthquake. I want to feel something. And everybody went home.
We had to honor that request.
And so everybody else had gone home, and Ian and I are sitting having lunch. And all of a sudden an aftershock hit, and it was one of the waves. Right. And so Ian and I are sitting there. And of course, inside me, I'm going, yeah, I thought it happened while I was here. But I looked around the restaurant, and you could see the emotional and the psychological effect that had on them, because it went from this loud restaurant to all of a sudden you were at church. It was that quiet. It was everybody, the rest of the lunch, everybody was hushed and quiet, because it rattled them psychologically enough. It reminded them, okay, we're still in earthquake land. And it was
Yes,
interesting to see that 5 years later.
yes. I know for some people and fire chasers, you find the quake a good one, exciting. And I think some of my friends living in the Caribbean and other countries where they deal with storm and hurricane, and we often have this debate about whether earthquake or a hurricane is the scariest. And I just said, thank you very much. I stick with my earthquake. Just because, well, if you live in countries where, and I've been to Japan, I'll talk about the experience of Japan, because this is the spirituality aspect of this all. Um, there's just something about the soul of Japan that grabs me every time I go. But yes, if you live in a country where uh, earthquake is a known hazard, so we have over 10,000 earthquakes in a year in New Zealand, so it's always shaking. We always say, yeah. But we find coping mechanism rather So we, those of us who work in academic institution and we study hazard and all that, we probably have a different mindset about those things because it gives us, we have something to study when they occur. And so we find some kind of coping mechanism, in dealing with them. But one of the things that is remarkable about trust, part of being connected, and when you have an understanding that the country you live in is doing enough, sort of, within at least at that strategic level, and what you need to do as an individual, that helps to that helps with how you react in such a case. It doesn't take away, because I can understand someone like him because he was part of the search and rescue, and so they've seen the good, the bad, and the really ugly of that, of response of any of those. But for other people, they tend to find a way to stay connected and cope with it. That buildings are built to certain regulation, and so for anything more than should be fine for 5.7, 5 points, but that at 5.7, every major building will be assessed for any cracks and all that. And people know what to do. They just step out after the quick stop and the assessment is done. And then if it's safe enough to go back, you go back in. If it's not safe enough, people get into their car and you drive away and go somewhere else. And so there's that general understanding that, well, they know there's a lot of enforcement around policy, around building regulations and policy. Most of the critical buildings, like the hospital, for example, are built, they have baseline isolation. So it actually absorbs the pressure of the shake. And they have all those things also in Japan, in many places. It still doesn't take away from the impact that there's trigger tsunami, and then you have this big wave that you have to deal with. So after a shake, you start running. People who live on the coastline in New Zealand also, after a good shake, you start running. So in a way, you say you have to stay fit. But it's understanding that the relationship you have, because some people live remote, the people you're connected to will help you with information that you need. Your local emergency services or civil defense. So we always say we are all civil defense in New Zealand, because everyone has got a responsibility for their personal resilience and community resilience. Right. So it just shows that connectedness also. So if you go to, in one of my previous roles there, if you go to certain places where it's mostly community of farmers, farmers or people in winery and all that, there is a knitted community. So they have a way of sharing information about risk and what they need to do, and then they collaborate. I'm not saying it's perfect, but I'm just saying there's that sense of connectedness amongst community. So community of interest, but also community based on location because of their proximity to one hazard or the other. And all this helps to emphasize the importance of connectedness, respecting your environment, staying connected to your environment, so you know how your environment behaves, and if it's behaving differently, you take caution and you take action.
Right.
But if you're not connected to your environment and you're not emotionally connected, but this is the space of spirituality. It's not about religion, but being able to understand your environment. That helps, because you can sense when something is about to happen or when something is out of place. And then if you're careful enough or you assess, you'll be able to take measures, or just put some preventive measures in place. It also means that, when you live in a country like that, or live in any country that is an island, that that you're susceptible to different kind of hazard from different direction or water view. You're more careful with your environment, knowing that even before external help gets to you, it's going to be a while. So you try to be nice to your friends. You try to maintain that 2 degrees that, be nice to the next person, because probably that will be your neighbor coming to help you. So you have to either probably, smile to your neighbor every now and then, so that if you need help, it comes.
That would be good. Yeah, it would be good to do
that. So we say, it's a small village, or the country is a small village or a big village. And that helps in terms of reducing stress at times. of how you cope with this thing. People have things that they do every Friday or every Wednesday, and this is their way of staying connected to one another. Um, it's also their way of staying connected to the environment. People go for a walk by the beach. People go hiking. People go surfing. Um, it's just, one of the ways to stay connected. The question to other people is, what do you do to stay connected to yourself and to your environment and to the people around you? Because this is important for your well-being and reducing stress. You at times don't know that how much stress you kind of embrace in your day-to-day life, especially if you have like I stress, I risk job. Um, but at times people get so used to this kind of environmental context that they become numb to it, or they don't
Yeah.
actually recognize it as stress until they probably break down, or they're not being as responsive or reactive or sharp as they used to be. And this is where it's important to just take a step back and reflect. I'm not saying anything new here. I know most people know that, but it's just you know paying attention to those types of connections. And I'm emphasizing social, physical, environmental, and economic, because these are the things that destructive events affect around us. There will be damage or disruption to the environment. There will be damage physically. And so, for example, when critical infrastructures are affected by either storm, and so there's power outage, there's telecommunication breakdown, the road are destroyed. So what happens? We're back to the dark ages, right? So the bridge that connects you
Right.
to the other side of the city is now gone. Okay. And that's going to take a while to break, to repair. All of a sudden now you have to drive extra miles because that was the way it was done before. Or well, if you want to be cheeky, you might decide to swim across across. But it's thinking through some of this thing. I'm not saying be sadist and always think of the worst case scenario. I'm just saying understanding that this happens around the world when destructive events occur is helpful for you to sit down and say, okay, what connections do I have? How connected am I to my environment? How connected am I my to people, and who exactly am I connected to, and what
Yeah.
does that
I had a
connection mean to me?
conversation. I had a conversation just recently with somebody whose sole focus is in the corporate world is networking. And one of the things that he mentioned, this applies with this conversation. One of the things that his name is Logan Wilkes. And one of the things that Logan mentioned was that you need to have those connections already in place if you're going to need something. You can't then all of a sudden, he was referring to like if someone's looking for a job, you can't say, hey, I want to come and join a networking group because I need a job. No, you need to have the connections there and then they can help support you. And it's the very same in disaster management or anything along those lines. You can't just all of a sudden, if you've got really good neighbors in your community, yes, you could raise the red flag and everybody's going to come running and helping. But um, it's good to have those connections ahead of time with those individuals, with the environment, everything around us, so that when it does happen, and you mentioned, yeah, you're not saying anything that is you know, earth shattering in the sense of we know how that we need to take a step back. We know we need to relax. We know we need to disconnect. But when you're in the middle of it, the question that I would have for you, Dulles, is when you're in the middle of all that, how does someone go about identifying that, oh my gosh, I have reached the critical mass that I'm going to implode if I don't step back? How do we get to that point and recognize that?
I think i think the first thing is the individual acknowledging that they actually do need to pulse now. And I'm not saying you have to say, oh well, I need help, or I need to run
Right.
to, yeah. No, you do have to acknowledge that, okay, well, there's something wrong, even if we don't know whether we need to pause or take a step back. and and that this often occurs when you don't have the right connections in place, because in my field, connection and networking is very, very important. I am connected to people around the world. Everywhere I go, I, have friends there. I've kind of developed families around around the world. So I have brothers who don't look quite like me. I have people who don't talk quite like me, and we're very close and very knitted. And we talk every now and then, at least once a week in some cases. With some people, almost every day. I went to an event in Netherlands in 2018, and I met people there. We stayed in touch, but there's a particular person, Azra. We met there, and we interact every day till now, and that's how many years ago, and we've not seen since then,
Yeah.
and we're so close. And this is the importance of connection and being connected, because you meet people and you're connected with them. But the reason I'm saying this is there was a time, and I was overwhelmed with work and everything. And she and one other person in Australia kind of sensed that something was wrong. And this is the importance of connection. Okay. People who see me daily didn't pick anything, but I was on the phone talking with her, and she said, you don't quite sound like yourself. And I've noticed in the last 1 week, 2 weeks, 3 weeks, you're kind of like, so tensed and agitated. This is not you, Dolas. And so it took my relationship, my social connections and links to wake me up to reality, to actually get me to think. And this is the role connection can play. But if you don't have that prior to, or I've understood the importance of that in my field, because you get traumatized. People have PTSD. They go to a place, they see things, and it affects them. So we learn to support one another. We talk about these things. We have all this funny, we're usually very jocular, in my field, because it's not to trivialize the experience of what we see. It's just a way for us to ensure that we laugh and we reduce the stress on ourselves, and we support one another that way. But it's the connection that you have, the relationship you have, the networks that you have, and it really doesn't matter if they're physically placed there with you, that helps you to kind of realize whether something is off and you do have to take a step back. But if you don't have that, is that acknowledgement that something is not right, and you want something different, you want to be in a better place. Let me put it that way. And that helps you to stop. Again, this is where it becomes tricky, because what people would do is go online, boom, 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 and go on Google and try to find help there, or go on social media and try to find help there. I'm not against that. If you think that's your go-to and you think that's the best way to find help, you can do that. But it's not usually what I kind of tend to encourage, because these are random people. Okay, these are people who don't know you.
Right.
And this is where we always talk about preparedness. And I think this conversation we're having is very important for people to start looking carefully at their relationship, at their networks, at their connections, and try to be the ones that would be to their good, to their wellness, to their well-being. If you know you're someone who stresses out a lot, you do need someone that is the calm in your storm. I'm not saying
Right.
the knights and shiny armor or whatever, somebody comes to rescue you, like we call it the Hollywood effect in my field. No, not that's not what I'm talking about. It's just someone that understands you and is able to kind of bridge and support you. The person that also sees you when you can't see yourself, or when you're too preoccupied to see yourself. I've been very fortunate all through, you know, my life, and especially my professional life, to have those people around me. When I was doing my PhD, it was my supervisors, because we spent quite a bit of time together, and they've got to know me and I got to know them. And I think likely because I was so cheeky about my I walked into their office one day and I said, look, this is how I'm going to approach my research. I'm going to treat it like a disaster, like a crisis that I don't want to become a disaster. So I have to plan. And they all laughed about it. But it was just very good for our relationship because I would create an agenda for a meeting. I would tell them things before. They would tell me their schedule, when they're going on sabbatical or when they will not be available or go on conferences. And that helped me to plan around them. And so we had this, professional relationship that we're all connected to one another. And so when I wasn't up to it and they saw that, my pace had kind of declined, they said, take a break. They actually forced me to take a break. They said, we're not going to look at your work. You've got to go away. Go and take a break. And then every now and then, and they feel like I'm too wrapped up in my work, they say, yeah, you have to go on conference now. We got the funding for you. Go for a conference. Go and talk to other people. You have to talk to
Go
other
away.
people. Yeah, go away. You need
Go
people
away.
who can say that to you. Just go,
Yeah,
go away.
exactly.
Go connect, go
It's,
network.
what? Your stress level's gotten a little high. So,
Yeah, but it was just that I just felt like, my pace wasn't quite the same. And it's good to have people around you and in your life who are able to identify changes, even when you don't notice it.
yeah,
And when you think it's not significant, and they can actually pick that, okay, fine, it might be nothing, but just go away and come back with a fresh mind. And I do that now with all the students I supervise. I studied them. I profiled them. Okay, they're not criminals, okay? But I studied them, I profiled them just to understand their personality and their pattern of work. So if I notice that something is wrong, I reach out.
you can pick up on that early.
Exactly. And if people need to
Yeah.
take a break, I encourage it. And what I say to them is what one of my bosses said to me a long time ago. Dollars go away. Your half-baked self is not good to me. So you can interpret
Wait,
that
wait.
in different ways.
Did you say your half-baked self is no good?
Yes. Yeah, that was what she said. And and,
I
and
love
I
it.
love that because people will say, yes, in a way she's saying that when you're not 100%, you are not good to me. And I understood that. I don't want to give anything less than my 100%. But she
Right.
was also saying, go and take care of yourself. You deserve, don't come back until you are fully baked. And well, maybe that got me thinking about cake and all the things you can bake and got me peckish and hungry, but
Hmm.
but, but yeah. but yeah, I got the message. And so
That goes along the lines of when you talk about taking that time to step back. Here in the United States, a lot of talk over the years has been, Stephen R. Covey and his 7 Habits of Highly Effective People, and he talks about sharpening the saw. You've got to take time to take that step back to be able to be most effective in your workplace, to be able to find something that, and Victoria and I talk about it, are sharpening the saw activity, right? For her
yeah.
it's this, and for me it's this. And so what are we doing to make certain that when we come back and are engaged, we are 100% in whatever we need to be doing?
But we do have to acknowledge that it's very difficult. What we're talking about, I would say I'm extremely fortunate. I am in the field where you have more, you tend to meet people who are genuinely good people than the ones who aren't. So I would say in that sense, I'm extremely fortunate to be in this field because you do have to be either crazy or absolutely love people to want to put yourself in harm's way to help others.
Right.
Okay, and save the environment. It's got to be either of the two. In most cases, you tend to see, and meet people who are actually really good people, and so when you're amongst good people, it might be, it might be possible to actually experience this and have that support system, but it's not always the same. It was the case everywhere. So you talked about the United States, where everybody's trying to make a living, and that's the same in every country. Everybody's trying to make a living. So that's the typical workplace. So people don't care about you because, well, they've got to make a living, and you might all be fighting for the same job and for the same promotion. So it's a battle of the fittest and the survival of the fittest. So why should they help you? Why should they be thinking about you? Why should they be considerate? And in a way, this is what some of our communities and society has become. And we shouldn't, be oblivious to that reality. But amidst that, this is where healthy relationships that can, foster open communication and collaboration comes in. And again, that's, in other words, networking. Because in my field, in what we do, and I know you understand this, it's not a go it alone. You work in teams. When you work in the fire service, you've got to work with other people. Team
Right.
sports, you can be an individual star, but you've got to work with other people in teams, especially in team sports and in most organization. And you know that in organization and agencies, like, you're dealing with risk all the time, you're putting yourself in danger, you need to have people who've got your back. And so this is where the healthy relationship come in, because who are the people you can collaborate with? Who are the people who can help you retain your sanity? And it might not be people who are physically in that workspace with you. It might be someone in the same profession in another country. I mean, it's
Right.
virtual world now. And so I've worked in places before that it was difficult for me to connect with people who I worked with in that place. Okay, so I reached out after a while, and for months, from after months of trying, I reached out to my known contacts in different parts of the world. I also looked up people who I feel like, would be able to guide me or support me through some things. I, went to conferences, I went to forums, I attended roundtables just to meet people, solely to network. And at times, even though I'm not job hunting, and this is what I also advise my students and people, even though I'm not job hunting, you can apply for a job in a place that you're interested in, because in a way they then get to know you. I see it as networking. Because if they're impressed by anything in your CV or in whatever you send to them, they will reach out. You've opened a line of communication. So at times you
Yeah.
have to deliberately build this healthy relationship if you can have them organically in your place of work. And this is very important again because of your wellness and well-being. I've been in a situation before that I work with this thing and I just realized that for a month or two, I've not laughed with people in my team. I know people say, yes, we work together, we don't have to be friends, but there's just something about me and that physical, that workspace, whether it's virtual or physical, it's got to be,
Right.
it needs to be conducive. It needs to be, I don't know, it needs to have the right kind of ambience. It needs to be mutually beneficial. It needs to be positive. If it isn't, then it truncates innovation. So I always walk into a place, or when I, approach my team, I make, crack a joke, make everybody laugh, relax. I do that with my students in my class also. Because I said, when you're all so tensed up and you bring all this negative here and problems, you can't learn. You can't, we can't function together. So I realized I can't laugh with those people. They don't laugh with me. They don't have any joke. They don't laugh to my joke. Not like, I'm funny, but it was just kind of weird that everything you try and they don't have anything that is funny to say. It was becoming very uncomfortable for me. So, um, in a way, I found the reason not to attend meetings as much if I can get away with it. And rather, I spent more time with other people whom
With people
I
that
could
we
laugh
enjoy
with.
being around. Yeah,
Yeah, with whom
exactly.
I
We
could
want to
laugh
hang
with.
out with people that we, yeah.
So you see
So,
what I mean? Because for me, that was important for my wellness and mental health. I do have to laugh.
right.
It doesn't mean that I'm not serious in the workplace. It's just the fact that it's, when you're relaxed and you're connected to people, it's easier to work with people that you like and who understand what you're on about. It just makes the work get done, sort of. And this is what
It
I
does.
mean
Yeah.
by healthy relationship to promote communication and collaboration. You may not necessarily have it physically where you are, but there's nothing stopping you to at least make that effort to have the right kind of relationship because it does help down the line.
And it really does. I mean, you and I mean, we're nowhere near each other right now. Right now, you're in the UK,
You don't know
right?
that, Mark. I could probably be next door to you. You know me. Just joking. Yes, I am in the
No,
UK now.
I'm gonna go. No, no. Based off of our conversation a little earlier, I'm gonna tell you, I have a general idea of what time zone you're in.
Time zone could be deceptive. It's always funny though,
It
because
can.
every time people reach out to me, they say, Dollars, where are you? Because I could be in the plane, I could be in a different country.
Yeah, exactly. Well, and I've asked that same question. Yeah, because it's like, okay, I don't know where you're going to be at any given day, right? And it's like, okay, well, never mind. We can talk later.
We'll make it
I
work.
love
We're
it when it's like,
connected.
okay, wait, you're in the States? Yay. Awesome. Whatever that is. So, well, I can't tell you how much I appreciate you taking the time today, Dolas, and spend a few minutes with us to hear some of your insights on being connected and especially the importance of I see it especially in disaster recovery, in the middle of it all, to be able to take that half a step back and just take a deep breath, and find those individuals. And you're right, we all tend to go to those that we can laugh and we can relax a little bit and it's not too stuffy all the time. We want to be able to have that ability to let go of some of that stress, and to do that often comes with laughter.
Yeah, it
And
does.
and yeah,
It really does, because strong social connections can help individuals develop resilience. But beyond that, it can also help us cope with life challenges more effectively, because all of a sudden it's not just you. There are people there going it with you. And if they're in similar situation like a disaster, because the disaster has affected your community together, then it helps to not go the journey alone, because recovery could be very traumatizing and could take a long time. So that strong social connections are very important in your recovery journey. And of course, you plan that before. It helps to have economic connections also, because yes,
yes,
if those strong social connections are there, it's good if those strong social connections are also linked sort of to economic benefits, whether you can do business together, or whether you work together, or whether you can invest together to share the risk, transfer the burden of certain things. It helps because it just makes your network more robust. You see people who have been classmates, and or people who have been friends since school, universities, high school, and they do all those things together. They're married and their family know one another, and things like that, and they invest together because they want the best for one another. These are examples of strong, social relationship or social connection. But it's also important to look at how this helps in terms of holistic health, to foster well-being and reduce stress and improve overall health outcomes, because we tend to be in an era where there's just so many funky health related issues popping up, things I've never heard before. And I'm not saying that somebody's manufacturing it somewhere. That's not what I'm saying. But things happen that you might not be prepared for. um
right.
it's those strong relationships that you have that could be very beneficial, um, and how connected you are to them and to your environment.
Yep. Wow. It has been I've loved our conversation, Dulles. I always love getting on and chatting with you. We don't do it often enough as far as I'm concerned. It seems to be every few months we end up touching base. But I will tell you right now, Victoria wanted me to say hi before we
Hi,
finish things
Victoria.
up. I'll pass that along. And so just having you here has been a great thing. I think it helps that conversation about how important all the different intricacies of connection can be. And so I appreciate you touching base on all those areas and how that can help support someone's overall health and their physical, whether it's all the pieces, that social, emotional, mental, spiritual. You hit on all of those. So thank you very much today. And so I appreciate that. And thank you all for joining in, spending some time with Dulles and I. And we will see you all on the next go around for Double Helix. Thanks again, everybody. Have a great day.
Thanks, Mark.
Okay.
Thanks, everyone.
Yeah.
Bye. Stay connected.
Bye. Yeah, yes, exactly. Thanks.